Blind boys don't lie. Immortal fear, that voice so clear through broken walls. That scream I hear. Cry, little sister.
Mark Canton was the president of Warner Brothers, and he took me out to lunch on a Saturday and started to describe the movie. And it was really a children's movie at that time. And I said, is this some little kid's vampire movie? Which was so arrogant. I'd only done 3 films. And, you know, this is the president of a movie studio. And, you know, and I think I was very condescending. And he was, I could tell he was angry, and he said, well, would you do me the courtesy of reading it? And so I said, sure. So I got the script on a Monday morning, and Dick Donner was supposed to direct it. But he had just been given Lethal Weapon.
I have a problem that if I'm on a project too long, before I get to make it, I've made it in my head so many times, I lose my enthusiasm. And I was doing something else and just decided, let's get somebody in to make this film. And my wife, brilliant, beautiful, loving, greatest producer in town, Lauren Shula Donner, had done Joel's first picture. And she always said, Joel, it's just great, it's just great. And he really sounded, yeah, this is kind of Joel's cup of tea.
You'll never grow old, Michael. And you'll never die. But you must feed.
I had one of the greatest casts in the world, and that makes the movie, too. I mean, it's beautiful to look at, I think, and the music's great, but it's really the cast that makes it. Most of the young people were relatively unknown. Marion Doherty was the casting director, and we must have met, I can't tell you how many kids we met, but I've been through that on St. Elmo's and DC Cab, and you know, when you're working with newcomers, you see everybody. Billy Wirth was a model in New York. Brooke McCarter was just starting out. Alex Winter had just graduated from film school at NYU. He was the youngest. Well, except for, you know, for Chance, who was the little vampire.
Drink some of this, Michael. Be one of us.
I had just completed making a film called Stand By Me, which was the first job I had in the United States. And I had done another job called At Close Range, which Sean Penn helped me get a small part in. It was his film, and Joel Schumacher had seen a close-up at the very end of the film of me watching Sean Penn go into a courtroom. And I had black hair at the time. It's a film that I really don't resemble what I normally look like on any level. But Joel saw that close-up and said, oh, I'd like to see him for this film. And he had me come in, and we had a reading, and we got on very well.
He can do almost anything, because he's a born character actor, and he was at 18. And you can see it in Lost Boys, because he has the least amount of dialogue of anyone in the movie, but his presence is extraordinary. The minute he shows up on screen, you just go, boom, you know, who is this guy?
My character happened to have the kind of really cool lines at the end of a scene. You know, he'd have the one great line. And so I'm deeply grateful to Joel for those.
Where is she? Take it easy, Michael. Where's Star? David? Michael, you ever want to see Star again? You better come with us now.
Jason Patric came in the first day I was seeing people, and he had just turned 18. Jason had done a television movie and had also done a film called Solar Babies, but nobody really knew him yet. There was absolutely no one with those looks and that talent at 18 right at that moment. Absolutely no one, and he didn't want to do the movie. He had a wonderful manager, Dolores Robinson, then, and for 6 weeks we met almost every day, at least a couple of times a week with Jason, and for me to talk him into doing the movie. He was afraid it would be an exploitation horror movie. And, you know, he's very serious about his acting and didn't want to do a teenage vampire movie. And I understood that, but I talked and talked. And so fortunately, after 6 weeks of this, he said yes, because I really had no second choice at all. In my mind, I thought that Star would be this sort of little blonde waif that lived on the beach with this young boy, you know, the part that Chance played, the Lilith vampire. And she'd kind of have short hair and be this little pixie waif that he would feel sorry for, right? So I saw all the girls, and none of them were right. We just couldn't get this part right. And Jason had done a play with Jamie Gertz.
You know where David took me tonight, don't you, Star?
Who's David?
Yes, it's my fault. If you hadn't met me, if I hadn't liked you.
Jamie's very intelligent and a wonderful actress, so it was really because of Jason. I kept running around looking for pixie blondes, and it was Jason who really insisted I see Jamie, and I will be forever grateful to this day that he did. Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were so brilliant as this team, and Jamie Newlander, who plays the other Frog brother. I don't know how many movies the two Coreys did after this together, but it was a whole string of them. But it was all from this wonderful chemistry they had in Lost Boys. But you know, chemistry is not something that a director creates. You know, talent is talent.
I got this call to go down to Warner Brothers, so I went down, and as soon as I met Joel, he said, "Hey, Sam." And I was like, "But that's the character." "You mean I got it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Wicked," you know? So, and I got the big tour of Warner Brothers, and then he took me into his, like, office, and I met Jason Patric, and right when I met Jason, I felt like everything was closure. My character is just, it's like empathetic. He's a nice guy, really independent, kind of, I don't want to say cult-ish, but into the long kind of weird-looking trench coat things, the earring, and very into comic books, like badly into comic books. That's his addiction.
And you can't put the number 98 with the 300s. Laurie Lamaris hasn't even been introduced.
Where the hell are you from? Krypton?
I still remain very, very dear friends with Richard Donner, who was the executive producer, of course, on the film. And we had done Goonies together. And he said to me, "I've got this film coming up. I think you'd be perfect for it. It's called The Lost Boys." I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting." He said, "Yeah, you know, come in and meet with Joel Schumacher, the director, and, you know, have a read." So I came in and read the script and did my thing, and he was like, "That was great, but could you maybe butch it up a little bit?" I was like, what does that mean? So basically, he gave me an order to go out and rent all the Stallone movies and all the Chuck Norris movies, like Rambo and First Blood and Missing in Action, all those kind of movies. He said, "That is your character. I want you to meld all of these guys together and make something out of it." I said, "Okay." So that's what I did. That became Edgar Frog.
Joel Schumacher spoke at my acting class, actually. And it just kind of, when I went into the audition, he had some, because I had a little history with him, having asked a question. You know, when a director speaks in an acting class, everyone tries to ask a question so that the director's going to notice them, you know. And I did, and I think he kind of remembered me from that, so I felt confident going in. And my first audition was a callback, and my agent just kind of arranged this, and he said, "Just don't tell them that you weren't on the original audition." And so I didn't, and it was good, and it just worked out.
The Frog Brothers will always remain two of my favorite characters in any of my movies, because you wish you knew them. They're singularly focused.
I think the fun part about the character and the comic value of it is that he doesn't think it's funny, and he's not in on the joke. So it's one of those people that you just kind of have to laugh at, because, you know, they really take themselves very seriously, and they believe every word of what they're saying about themselves or whatever it is they believe in. Whereas, you know, as an outsider, you can kind of look at this guy and be like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with him?"
Kill your brother. You'll feel better.
He wanted us to be really tough and totally cold, tough. to the point that I thought that's what the characters were. I didn't realize until maybe halfway through the project that it was funny what we were doing.
We blew it, man. We lost it. Shut up. We unraveled in the face of the enemy. It's not our fault. They pulled the mind scramble on us. They opened their eyes and talked.
I told them they were Marines, commandos. Well, they don't think they're funny. They're going to kill vampires. You better not make fun of the Frog Brothers. I'll have them stake you. Right. No, they're dead serious. They are the G.I. Joes of this movie. I only wanted Diane Wiest. And she, I think, had just won the Academy Award for Hannah and Her Sisters. So I thought it was just a pipe dream. I couldn't believe when she said yes, because she's one of my favorite actresses. And I thought, well, you know, once people win an Academy Award, and you know, and she's a very serious, dramatic actress, too, although she's done great comedies. I was just thrilled when she said yes.
You're the only woman I ever knew didn't improve her situation by getting divorced.
Yeah, I know. But a big legal battle wasn't going to improve anybody's situation. You know, Dad, we've all been through enough. You know, anyway, I was raised better than that.
Hey, ouch, my hair.
And I had always been a fan of Edward Herrmann. And he had just the right combination of sort of whimsy and, you know, it was to get people that could understand the tone of the film, which was, it's part scary, but it's part whimsical, too.
You have a generous nature. I like that in a person. My name's Max.
I'm Lucy.
How are you?
Hello.
I was approached with the script, and I read it, and I thought, this is great. You know, anything to get out of a suit and stop playing historical characters, you know. And I think, I don't know, recently I had just played Alger Hiss, and I'd done Roosevelt and all this other stuff. I thought, this is great, a vampire. Man, it's going to be fun, especially with Diane and Barney. I never thought that I would be able to play a sexy guy like this. He has one foot in the real world, or our world, and he has one foot in his own. I suppose he's more in the vampire world. He's domestic. I like Max because he doesn't want to just tear things apart. He wants to build this little structure in this cell. It's all going to be wonderful and very cozy and gemütlich. Maybe he's a German vampire. I don't know. I should have played him with a German accent. Family and, you know. So he was fun and odd to discover.
Dad. Dad, you shouldn't sneak up on people like that.
Brought you something to dress up your room with, Sam. How do you like that, huh?
Thanks, Grandpa.
Barnard Hughes was also really great because he was in a television series called The Kavanaughs, and his producers made it possible for us to work with him on the movie, and there was, you know, I had no replacement for him at all. He was just perfect and so much fun to work with. Then we put a lot of, you know, very talented people together to try to do this basically teenage vampire movie. Michael Chapman was a stroke of such incredible luck. I mean, this is the man who shot Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. And he had left cinematography to direct. And his first film was with Tom Cruise called All the Right Moves, and it was quite successful.
I've always loved horror movies, loved vampire movies and werewolf movies, and I never got to do a werewolf movie. I always wanted to, but that was my vampire movie, and I jumped at the chance because I've always loved I love really old-time cheesy horror movies. The best work a cameraman can do often comes from the impetus of the style of the director. To have the director also give this enormous energy of visual information style is very useful, and Joel had great visual style. The Lost Boys, they are the hip kids in school that you always yearn to be accepted by but never are, you know, who are so mysterious and so much a thing apart from the rest of the school, and so hip and so cool that you yearn to be like them and never can be. And Joel somehow made that work through casting and through the way he directed them and through their costumes. and through the stylishness of the motorcycles and the way they ride off into the darkness, and then they appear, and they're ultra cool. And that's Joel. I wish I could say that I'd done that, but I photographed them and hopefully photographed them well. But that whole style and that whole concept of them is strictly Joel.
I was just thrilled that we could really interest him in our movie because he was way out of our league. And to get someone of that kind of talent and that taste to shoot a teenage vampire movie was pretty extraordinary. And he did the most fantastic job because we didn't have a lot of time and a lot of money, and you're working with a lot of young kids, some of them who hadn't had a lot of experience. And at night, and it has a lot of challenges to it, and he did a magnificent job. I still think the film is really, really ravishing. Bo Welsh was production designer, and he's quite brilliant, and he did a great job because we had very little money for the sets.
We shot most of it in Santa Cruz, and then, well, actually half in Santa Cruz and then half Warner Brothers, stage 15 and stage 12. Stage 12 was the cave. Stage 15 was identical. The Polaroids from the actual house out there in Santa Cruz. Leaves fall from the trees and stuff, and they land in the ground wherever they land. And this guy had leaf per leaf perfect, everything perfect. The locations were unbelievable. My wardrobe was crazy. I mean, the long jacket I wore, the beige one with the gray stripe, black stripe, beige stripe. I mean, I had such crazy stuff to wear.
Corey Haim's outfits, that's all thanks to Susan Becker. Well, we decided that he would be, because he's a fish out of water and he doesn't like being in this rural setting with this crazy grandfather, that he would be this mall fashion victim. And so he's beyond fashion. He's got this incredible wardrobe, but it's all thanks to Susan Becker, who did St. Elmo's with us also, and Flatliners, who's a wonderful costume designer. And I think she did a great job with the Lost Boys, too. I love their clothes, and she did a lot of invention with it.
Where you going, Star?
I don't know a single teenager that doesn't want to kind of pretend or at least try to look like a rock star for a moment. I've been very fortunate over the course of my career to do a lot of films, but I would have to say by far, if there was a single film that I felt I was associated with, it was Lost Boys. It's really only in hindsight when people still come up today and go, oh man, I like what you're doing now, but Lost Boys is my favorite, and it really had an impact back then.
It was totally positive. I mean, it was unlike anything that I'd made before and fairly unlike anything I'd made since. And it was great to be in a vampire movie it was a high-quality movie, a high-quality feature, and it was informed by this eccentric intelligence that you knew you were making something out of the ordinary.
When I look back at my career of what were the most painful movies to get through, Lost Boys was definitely the most painful. Yeah, it was probably very parallel with what I was going through in my life at the time, and I think that probably has a lot to do with it. I was obviously coming of age, becoming a young adult, very unsure with where I was going with my career as an actor, as a human being, as an individual, so many things up in the air. And I was also going through a lot of personal change. Just because I had a hard time getting through it doesn't mean that it wasn't worth it. Because I believe that you do pay a price for art.
There's like a lot of responsibility that comes with acting in general, but when you're a kid, you kind of want to veer off and do your wild child thing, which I did enough of. It just makes you kind of grow up a little faster, that's all.
The things that we get applauded for now about the film, it was really new territory, definitely for the studio, but also for us. And, I wasn't sure whether it was going to float. And also, remember, all these kids were unknown. So this movie was not hanging on any superstars. And I think everyone was very nervous about it. I don't think I was, because you sort of have to, if you're gonna lead people up Mount Everest, you have to feel you can get them up there and down alive. So I really did believe in what we were doing. And I thought it was sexy and funny, and if people wanted to see this kind of movie, then we had something for them.
The phenomenal thing about Lost Boys is how it grew over time. It made it financially for the studio made an impact from day one, but it really grew into being a cult or a cultish, iconic kind of movie down the road, where you would start to see it in art house theaters at a midnight showing and things like that, and then was probably one of the top 5 most successful videos in Warner Brothers history. Certainly through the 90s it was. And so it was amazing to watch this film kind of go from generation to generation. I have a 26-year-old stepdaughter and a 16-year-old daughter, and both have found that film in their own time, and certainly not from me. You know, they found it from their friends and things like that. And I think that's phenomenal, that a film can actually get handed down from one generation to another, and do that. And that really is a testament to Joel.
I don't know what makes a cult movie or a piece that lasts. I don't think anybody knows. You can analyze it to death in your film classes, say he did this here and there. But I remember the story of Bogart talking to Ingrid Bergman at lunch at Warner Brothers and said, "Honey, you better get another job real fast because this is going to be a dog." And it was Casablanca. I mean, nobody knows why some films hit and why some films don't. The spin on it is hip. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It doesn't try to make itself some huge pronouncement. There are some vampire things that have been made since that I think will fade rather quickly, but this one won't.
I think that it's set a model that has been used again since The Lost Boys, and so it's hard to remember what vampire movies were like before The Lost Boys.
Just like with great music, great films are timeless. It just flows. It's just got the heart, it's got the comedy. I mean, the great thing about any movie to me is one that incorporates all the elements.
It's simple. It's a good film. It's entertaining. It's offbeat. It's still different. And it stands up as being a genre film that was so unique that it broke the genre.
I'm just so proud of it. I mean, the thing that I can't believe is that I'm sitting here talking about it because, as I said, it was my 4th film and I didn't know there was going to be a 5th. And now I've, just finished shooting my 19th. And, and as I said before, I mean, this really turned my career around. Doors flew open that had been closed. And it's an enormous privilege to make films, and that you think even if you've entertained people with one of your films, it's really fantastic because I love movies, and when I go to the movies and I feel satisfied, I'm so happy. And if this film didn't disappoint people when they went to see it or when they watch it on DVD or something, then I'm just thrilled because we did it to entertain them. It's not a deep personal Joel Schumacher film, and I don't know if anybody wants to see that anyway, but we all put as much of ourselves in it, but it is a teenage vampire movie, and if people get a kick out of it, then I'm really honored,